I'm Dave Thomas, and today I have a Rocketarium AMRAAM that my son built a couple of years ago. This was his first attempt at a fairly complex rocket. The build is actually pretty good, but as you can see, the paint here, he applied way too thickly and had problems with that. But we flew it anyway, and he ended up with a crumpled front end here. And we could repair this, and I asked him if he wanted to, and he said no. He was kind of not even interested in this rocket anymore. So I told him I'd take it on here. And instead of just repairing it, I've already got an AMRAAM of my own that's in much better condition than this. And instead, I'm going to frankenrocket this if we can. So it's still got an intact recovery system here, although it's been disconnected from the parachute. And we may be able to still save the baffle in there. I grab the parachute and get it out of the way. Alright, so let me raise the camera here a little bit, and maybe we can see down inside there. Not quite. The baffle's actually down there quite a ways, which is actually a good thing. That means we can cut off some of this tubing here and still have enough room to put the parachute in. Now I'm going to attempt to use this tubing guide from Estes. Now with the thick coat of paint that he put on here, this may or may not work. And we're also going to need to untie the shock cord here. Either that or cut it. Looks like I can get it untied. Alright, so I'm just going to set the nose aside. Now, it may be that this is going to be too thick to use both pieces. So we'll try this with the outer piece first and see if I can at least get it on there. And it's thinking probably not. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if I can get this all the way down, you can kind of see it scraping the paint along the way. That's okay. The inner piece here probably is not going to go on. It's better if it does, but we can make do without. Okay, so if I can just get all of the pieces on there. Well, oh, we got the shock cord stuck. That's part of the problem. Alright, get that out of there. There, it moves a little better. Okay, so this locks in place, and that'll just give us a more stable cutting platform there. So now I can just take my hobby knife and cut right up next to the cutting guide here. Like this. Careful I don't cut my thumb. There we go. Okay, now if we take a look down here, we still have lots of room down that too. I still don't think we can get it under the camera well enough that you can see inside. But there's still lots of room down in there for the parachute on top of the baffle. So we can save that part. Now, as I was browsing through Thingiverse, I found this coupler. Okay, this is supposed to be a BT60 to BT50. Alright, so the tube here is a BT60. I'm just going to move the shock cord out of the way. Alright, so that should fit on top of this. Okay, pretty snug, but good. Okay, now this is solid. Now it's not completely solid. It's got, I think, a 40% infill. But it's got quite a bit of weight to it. And then once we put the second body tube on here and a nose cone, then we shouldn't have to have the added weight that the original nose cone for the AMRAAM did. This should push the center of gravity far forward. Now I will simulate this on OpenRocket or on RockSim to make sure that it's stable in the end. Alright, and then I've got a piece of BT50 tubing here. I think this was left over from a repair I did on another rocket. Alright, and then on top of that we can add another nose cone. Now I've got quite a few nose cone 50 sizes here, and so I may just kind of look through them and see which one is going to look best on this. So here I have a box of nose cones. Some of these I purchased, some have been recovered from other kits. Alright, so these are a whole bunch of alpha or generic nose cones there. Alright, that one's from a Little John. That's not going to fit. Alright, we've got a whole bunch of them in here, different shapes and sizes. And then I've got this one that's a sci-fi one that also comes with a nice tail cone nozzle on it. I don't think I'm going to use that one. Okay. I think for this, just because I'm going to use this Little John nose cone, or honest, I guess it's an Honest John nose cone. Alright, I'm not going for anything scale-like or anything like that. I'm just kind of making a goofy rocket. Alright, so we can have that nose cone on there, and then it comes down to our transition. And then the rest of the rocket is still the main part of the AMRAAM original kit here. Now I'm going to sand this down a lot to smooth out that paint job. Okay, and that's probably going to be what takes most of the time here. As I said, I'm not even going to attempt to make this a military model anymore. I'm just going to have some fun with it. So I'm going to go back and do a whole bunch of sanding on this part here, as well as putting this whole thing into a simulation program to make sure that it's stable. After communing with OpenRocket for a little while, I have found that yes, if we do attach this new piece to the cutoff portion of the AMRAAM, this will actually be a very stable configuration with a static margin of stability of about 2.5. So that should work nicely. Okay, so right now I'm thinking that once I've got the main part here sanded down, I'm going to paint it black. And then the upper part, I'll probably paint either all orange or maybe orange with a black nose cone on it. The printed transition here, and this was designed by user Jack Hydrazine. It comes with 2 points to mount screw eyes to it. Now the upper one will just glue this body tube on, it won't need it. Alright, but we will need a screw eye here. So here I've got one. This is approximately the same size screw eye that's used in the baffle in the original rocket. So here I'm just going to thread this in first of all. And it's not very tight. Alright, and I'm going to bring this back out. And since it's not very tight, I'm going to add some glue to this. So I am going to use a little bit of super glue, or crazy glue, alright, cyanoacrylate here. And I'm just going to put some right around there. This is a gel type. The runny type works just as well. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put that back in on the threads that I'd made. And this can be set aside to dry. The glue should set up in about 5 to 10 minutes. Now this nose cone, like many of Estes nose cones, is made in 2 halves, and we've got a seam on both sides of it here. Normally I would just go ahead and sand that down, but I want to be careful here because we also have these grooves here that are part of the detail of the nose cone. Now you could just fill in the grooves too, but I want to keep them. So I'm going to wet sand this with some 320 grit sandpaper just to knock down most of the seam. I'm not going to try and eliminate it completely, again, because I want to keep the detail down here. So I'm going to take this off camera and then come back after I've done that wet sanding. Here's the nose cone after sanding. You can still see a little bit of the seam there, but it's not as prominent. and as I wanted, I didn't, I still have the grooves here in the nose cone. I went ahead and also sanded lightly all the way around the nose cone so it had a uniform surface there that will make the paint stick better. Now when I put this together, I'm actually going to leave this as a payload bay, so I'll glue this part on, and then the nose cone will just friction fit in here. Most likely I won't just depend on a friction fit. You could just put some masking tape on this and put that in. I'll actually put a plastic rivet in there, but I'll do that after the paint's been done. Okay, so it looks like that glue is set there. I'm going to go ahead now and using some gel type super glue, I'm going to put a bead all the way around here. Now for this one you do want to use the gel type. The runny type just tends to soak into the cardboard without binding it to the plastic transition here. All right, and we'll just slide that in, turning as we go. Okay, and I'll let this dry for another 10 minutes or so. While the transition is gluing to the upper body tube there, I'm going to go ahead and first of all paint the nose cone, and then also do a whole lot of sanding on here. Now since it does have really heavy paint, I can actually wet sand this with not a lot of risk of getting the cardboard wet. Now before I take this off to sand the paint, I just thought of two other things I'm going to do to it. First is I'm just going to lightly sand the opening here with 150 grit sandpaper, to kind of even out any unevenness. There's a little bit of a dip mark from the knife there. I'm not going to take the whole thing out, I'm just going to make it less noticeable. Okay, and we've got a little bit of a weak spot here that I didn't want to cut all the way through, but we can reinforce the tube there with some regular super glue. So here I'm just going to run this on the edge. You can be kind of generous with this, but this will soak into the cardboard and harden and give it some more resilience. I often do this to the forward end of my body tubes anyway, as it helps prevent zippering as well, and just gives a better base for the nose cone to seat upon, or in this case the transition. Okay, and just let that set for not too long, maybe 30 seconds or so. And then I'm going to wipe this out to get rid of the excess glue here. So I'm just using some tissues. And then the glue that's still in there, that'll dry within about 5 minutes or so. And then recheck the fitting here, and if we have to, then we can sand this off. So like there's a little lip of cardboard there, we can just sand that off if it's in the way. But if it's not, if it's helping hold it in, it actually gives us a little bit better surface there. Okay, so now once this is dry, I'm going to go start in on the sanding. At the same time, I'm painting the upper body tube and transition as well as the nose cone. This is how the rocket looks after a considerable amount of wet sanding with 220 grit sandpaper. Now, I've not been able to get all the imperfections out, and I probably won't be able to unless I strip this all the way down to the cardboard. My intention was to sand it down to the primer layer, but in many cases I've gone through that because not only is the coat of paint thick, but in many places it's uneven. So I did get through to cardboard in a few of these places here. I also got through to wood on the fins in many cases, so it's a little bit damp, and I'm going to have to let this completely dry. I'm probably not going to try and get the sanding any deeper. I will try to apply some sandable filling primer, and maybe I'll be able to fill in some of these imperfections. But this is definitely going to be a paint job that's best viewed from all the way on the launch pad. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to go back to painting the other parts of the rocket, and we'll come back when we're ready to prime this one. Here the rocket has had 2 coats of filling sandable primer, and then I've wet sanded this again with 320 grit sandpaper, and you can still see a lot of the imperfections here. I was able to make them a little less noticeable. But I'm reaching the point of diminishing returns here, so it's going to take more and more effort to get an even smoother finish. To me, it's just not worth it for a rocket that's already crashed once and really didn't have that great of a finish to begin with. So I'm going to let this dry from the wet sanding, and then it will go and get painted as well. I've finished painting all of the parts of the rocket, and I went with a no hunting purple on the main part of the rocket here, because if you're going to have a silly looking rocket, you may as well go all the way. But now we can go ahead and attach things here. So the shock cord is up inside here. Just need to shake that out. Okay, take this knot out of it. Alright, and then we're just going to tie a double knot into the eyelet. Okay, and we'll just pull that from multiple directions here to get it good and tight. I'm going to trim this back to about 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch, so that it can't get caught here between the shoulder and the body tube. And then our parachute was fully recovered from the crashed rocket here. Alright, and it already had a snap swivel installed on it, so that can just be attached as well. Alright, actually before I attach that, I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on that shock cord knot. Use white or wood glue for this, and this is just to help keep it from coming unraveled at some later time. So just a little tiny dot of glue there, and just kind of work that into the knot. Okay, and then I'm going to let this dry before I put the parachute back on there. Now, one of the sources we can use for decoration is simply some self-adhesive vinyl. This is kind of an orangish holographic one here. This particular one is made by Cricut, so you can find this in hobby stores where they have the vinyl cutters and such. And here I'm just going to place this right at the end of the main body tube. Okay, I'm leaving just enough of it here to overlap a little bit, but not only will this delineate the transition between the body tube here and the upper section, since this is vinyl, it also kind of reinforces this area here and makes it a little less likely to get folded over or pilled or whatever. Okay, now you can dip this into some soapy water to make it easier to remove if needed. I'm going to see how well I can just do this dry just by keeping some tension on it here as we go around the edge. Now there's a little bit of irregularity to the tube, so we're seeing that there. Right, that came out pretty good. I'm just going to squeeze out all the bubbles. Okay, now we can still see some of the imperfections in the previous paint job that have come through. Sometimes these are good places to put a decal as well. You can hide a lot of sins under a well-placed decal. Okay, up here I had a little bit of paint kind of flake off right there. That's also a good place for a decal. So I'm going to go back and just find a variety of decals, and then I'll come back when those are all finished. I've applied a bunch of decals here, so On the main part of the rocket, I've gone with a planetary and stellar motif here on the fins. I've also added a silver band here just below the forward fins, and a Be Fabulous sticker here, which everybody should be fabulous when they can. Up on the payload section, I've also added some more wraparound bands here. I've also drilled through the top of the tube and into the nose cone shoulder. There's a 5/32 inch hole, which is just big enough to allow the insertion of a 4mm plastic rivet here. So I'm just going to stick that in and push it in. Okay, and that's going to hold the nose cone in place, so if you want to fly a payload in here, you can. This paint keeps attracting sanding dust here. Alright, and so now we're ready to put this all together. So here we'll go ahead and attach the parachute. Okay, and you can fold this in your preferred manner here. Okay, and the ejection baffle was left intact in this, and so we don't need to worry about recovery wadding. We'll just push everything in here. Get the parachute in, get the remnants in there. Alright, and then we'll just slide this in. Alright, make sure you don't get the shock cord caught in there or any of the shroud lines. Now that's a little bit snug. A little bit more than I prefer, and that is likely due to the super glue that we had put in there. Okay, so in this case you can either sand the shoulder of the transition here, or you can sand a little bit inside the tube. I'm going to sand the shoulder of this, but I'm going to do it off camera just because I'm going to have to take part of this apart once more. Here I've sanded around the shoulder with a little bit of 100 grit sandpaper, and basically I've just knocked down some of the ridges from the 3D print there. Didn't take a whole lot off. That's enough to keep it snug, but not so snug that it might not come off. Okay, now keep in mind, oh, I feel some shock cord caught there. Keep in mind that the temperature and humidity can change diameters a little bit as well. So you do want to make sure and check this again on your launch day, and you may have to do a little less or a little more there. If it's too loose, then you can add a little a little bit of masking tape to it. Yeah, sandpaper will probably keep it from coming all loose, but too much. Alright, so from tip to tail, we've got our recovered Honest John nose cone, BT-50 tube, 3D printed transition, and then the remains of that Rocketarium AMRAAM. Okay, hope this was informative to you, and if you ever have to rebuild your own AMRAAM, this might be a possibility. I hope to launch this soon, and in the meantime, please stay tuned for more of my videos.